Welcome to Anatomy and Physiology on Demand. And now we're going to move into a whole nother set of topics, and we're going to start talking about the skeletal system. So let's go ahead and get started. And in order to understand the skeletal system, you need to realize a couple of things about it. We are not born with every bone. We make bones, so the number of bones as you're in utero, the number goes up, 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 up. And then after you're born, you finish making all those bones and you have this massive number of bones. And then what happens is some bones start fusing together. And so the number of bones actually goes down. So depending on how old you are, there are slightly different number of bones, but it's right around 206. Not a number you need to memorize. I just want you to be aware that it's slightly more than 200 bones. And in addition, on our bones, every time we have an articulation, we're going to have some cartilage attached to it. So the cartilage is intimately involved with the skeletal system. So let's review a second about some connective tissue. We talked previously about dense, regular connective tissue, where all the fibers are going in the same direction. It has lots of collagen, giving it lots of strength, okay? And the classic examples of that are a ligament, which connects bone to bone. And on this picture, I think you clearly can see all the fibers going in the same direction. This actually is a picture of your anterior cruciate ligament, in case you're wondering. And that one behind it is your posterior cruciate ligament. And then this one over here is your medial collateral ligament. So that links very well with what covers in the knee anatomy for the lab section, if you just wanted to see what it looked like in a human as opposed to a model. In addition to a ligament being dense, regular connective tissue, as you know, tendons are the exact same tissue histologically. The difference being tendons are connecting muscle to bone rather than bone to bone. So why do we have a skeletal system? What does it do? Well, it supports the body. There's certain, without it, we would just be like this lump of protoplasm all collapsed down. We have bones that protect the soft parts. For instance, our skull protects our brain, our rib cage protects our lungs and our heart. This is a word you do need to learn, hematopoiesis. Excuse me, sometimes called hemopoiesis. What this means is that heme or hemato, that means blood, poiesis is formation. So what this means is it's forming all of your blood cells. This is not red blood cells. That would be erythropoiesis. This is your red blood cells and your white blood cells and the cells that are going to become your platelets. Every single cell found in your blood is actually made in the skeletal system in the adult. And the child can be made elsewhere because obviously they don't have bones when they're first developing. In addition, bones store stuff. As you know, we've got lots of calcium in our bones. That's what's making them hard. We also can have some phosphorus. And I want to point out this picture. This is showing these typical round cells, the adipocytes, like we saw in adipose tissue. So I want to let you know, no matter how skinny you are, your bone marrow's got a few adipocytes in it. So there's lipid storage that goes on in your bones as well. And the last big function is it has to do with the electrolytes and pH balance. And a lot of that is related to calcium. And finally, because we have muscle that attaches to the bones, that will allow movement. The contraction of the muscle allows the bones to change their location, and that's what gives you movement, whether it's locomotion or manipulating the environment or whatever it is. All right, so let's go back to the time of formation and look at how that fetal skeleton is developed, okay? There's no skeleton whatsoever the whole first month of gestation. At about 4 weeks of gestation, it's not important that you memorize these weeks, but around 4 weeks of gestation, so about 2 weeks after your missed menstrual period, the fetus starts making cartilage. And about a week later, it's going to start making some fibrous membranes. Okay, so in the grand scheme of things, you're going, what difference does a week make? Well, when you're only 5 weeks old, 1 week is 25% of your life. Okay, But these two things have to be made first. We have to make cartilage and we have to make the fibrous membranes, because these are the two things that are used to make bone. So we cannot make bone if we don't make the other two things, and that's why this is really important. And there's a lag. We have to have lots of time for the cartilage and the fibrous membranes to develop for where and in the shape we want the bones to be before those tissues will transition into bone. It's not those tissues becoming calcified that magically are bone. That's not at all. That would just be calcified cartilage or calcified membranes. But we have to change one tissue type into a different tissue type. And that starts around week 12, which is the end of the first trimester of pregnancy. And so there's a little picture of a fetus at week 12, and you can see how little of these skull bones are present compared to the purple picture at the right, which is showing what a baby looks like at birth. And I want you to pause this and look at it carefully, because we've talked about bones in lab and realize this baby, do you see any carpal bones? Do you see any tarsal bones? How about that knee? Do you see three bones in the coxal bone? Okay. So this is what I'm talking about, how the number of bones goes up, 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 and then some bones are going to fuse back down again. Okay. So in order to talk about bones in the skeletal system, we must first talk about cartilage. And as you recall, when we're looking at cartilage, and this is a beautiful picture of hyaline cartilage here, we have these lovely cells sitting surrounded by a space. And then we have this background matrix, because it's a tissue, it's got extracellular matrix, where it's going to have protein fibers, lots of collagen, but it's going to have ground substance. And the ground substance is kind of like this firm jelly kind of stuff, and it looks ground glass. So these cells in cartilage, we're going to use the word site for a mature cell, and we're going to use the prefix for cartilage, which is chondro. So those are mature cells, chondrocytes. And then the little space, remember I said they all are going to have their own little private hot tub around them? So this little space surrounding that chondrocyte is called a lacuna. And you learned in lab about the lacuna surrounding the osteocytes in an osteon. So we'll be talking about that again in this series of lectures on the skeletal system. So when you look at this picture, you not only look at the cartoon drawings, but look at the photomicrograph, because you know anatomy is a very visual science. And so you can see the lacuna, you can see the chondrocyte, you can even see the pinkish nucleus inside the chondrocyte. So chondrocytes, super important for cartilage. Can't have cartilage without them. And then the rest of this is the things I've already talked about. But here's what's important about cartilage you may have forgotten when I was talking about it as connective tissue. There are no nerves in cartilage. That means if you tear or damage your cartilage, it doesn't hurt. And here's the other bad news. There's no blood vessels in cartilage. So any nutrition that cartilage is getting is having to diffuse and from the surrounding connective tissue. So the closer it is towards the outside, the better nutrition, and the further away from the outside that piece of cartilage, the worse the nutrition and the more propensity it has for dying. That also means, since we don't have blood vessels, if you damage the cartilage, it is going to be super, 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 super slow to repair, if it can repair. So before puberty and you're grown, we got some other chemicals going on. It can repair because you're still making cartilage before puberty. By the time you're college age, you're pretty much done growing your new cartilage, and from now on, it's all downhill. So if you damage your cartilage in your 20s, it's going to be damaged for the next 80 years of your life. So be kind to your body from this point on. So as you recall, we had the three types of cartilage: the hyaline cartilage, elastic cartilage, and fiber cartilage. If you need to, go back, read the books, and refresh your memory about what each type does and how it looks. So let's talk a little bit about hyaline cartilage. This is the most abundant. It is at the but of the three, it's the weakest type. Does that mean it's weak? No, it's got a lot of collagen. It also has a lot of water in it. What that means is the other two types have more protein fibers. This one only has collagen. The other ones have more. The thing about hyaline cartilage, the reason why it's the most abundant is because at every single bone, when you're looking at the bones in the lab, and you're seeing all the smooth ends, every part at an articulation that is smooth because it's coated with hyaline cartilage. So you should be able to look at this picture, figure out what bone it is. I'll give you a second. Okay, yes. So this is the femur up there. This down here is the flat top of the tibia. And then this little structure over there is the skinny little fibula. So the femur's articulating with the tibia, and you can see the condyles of the femur, how beautifully smooth they are. They are yellowish here. This is the beautiful hyaline cartilage that we see. So not only is it here, we're also going to have it in our windpipe, the trachea, our rib cage between our ribs and our breastbone. It's going to have cartilage. And then the anterior part of your nose, because it can wiggle a little bit, that's going to be hyaline cartilage as well. Now, surrounding cartilage, we are going to have that connective tissue, except at an articulation. At the articular surface, we would not have that connective tissue, because if we did, and we had two pieces of cartilage with connective tissue, can you imagine like a piece of Kleenex between my fingers? And then every time I would flex and extend my knee or whatever this is, that tissue paper would be rubbing against itself, and it would just tear up into smithereens, okay? And that would be a good thing. So none of that connective tissue surrounding the cartilage at the side of the articulation. The next type of cartilage was fibrocartilage, which is the strongest just because it's the fibers. So it has a normal amount of collagen, then it has a bunch of extra collagen put on it, okay? And so some classic places where we have fibrocartilage would be between each of your vertebrae and your spine. I'm sure you've all heard about your disc, a slipped disc. Okay, we'll come back and talk more of the anatomy of that later on, but basically a lot of that is just a piece of fibrocartilage. We also have some joints called synovial joints, and some of them will have fibrocartilage. We'll talk about those. I think it's like 2 more lectures. And then the pubic symphysis between your right and left coxa bones, anterior between the 2 pubic bones, that has this extra little piece of cartilage. The pubic symphysis actually is a piece of fibrocartilage. So going back to that knee picture, do you remember when I said it's usually hyaline cartilage on hyaline cartilage? So I was hoping when you looked at this picture, you would have noticed that there was beautiful smooth hyaline cartilage there, beautiful smooth hyaline cartilage down here. Something stuck between the two. And what is stuck between the two here is a little disc of fibrocartilage, okay? So those menisci, the medial and lateral meniscus, which you have known about for a long time, that's actually an extra piece of fibrocartilage. It's wedge-shaped in the knee to try to add some stability to the knee. And in fact, if I go back to this picture, this is a picture of your knee joint. And so it's showing the C-shaped piece of fibrocartilage, which is the meniscus. As you can see, it's thicker here on the outside, and it's very thin here towards the center. And what that does is it puts like a little ridge up so that the femur cannot slide off of it, unless of course you tear the meniscus, in which case the femur knee joint loses a lot of its stability. And then the third type of cartilage was elastic cartilage. So it has a normal amount of collagen, but now we've thrown in extra elastic fibers. And as I said previously, you would have to have a special stain where you clearly can see all the skinny little elastic fibers. So the advantage of this type of cartilage is what? What is that elastic fiber allowing it to do? Okay, yes. So what it's allowing it to do is what all elastic tissue does. It stretches and then returns back to its normal size. And so as I said previously, there's exactly three places in your body that have elastic cartilage. Your right ear, your left ear. You should all know that. You've fallen asleep with the ear bent. It went back, right? And the third place is covering the top of windpipe in a structure called the epiglottis, whose name you don't learn until you get to the respiratory system. So don't worry about that. Just remember there's only three places in the body, and two of them are your two ears. All right, so with that, we're done with the types of cartilage, and now let's put cartilage to work. So what does it do? Well, as we've shown, it can support some soft tissue. You know, the tip of your nose would be very saggy if the cartilage in the anterior part of your nose disappeared. We also talked about hyaline cartilage at all the articular surfaces. So that's what allows you to flex and extend your articulations to move your joints. And then what we're going to be talking about today, it's one of the two models that can be used for making bone. So that's a super important function that we'll get to shortly. So to understand cartilage growth, so let's not worry about bone formation. That's going to be a different video. What we're going to talk about now is we need to make cartilage. So in order to make cartilage, we need to know who the players are. You can't play football if you don't understand what the quarterback does or what the defense does or the offense does generally. So who are the players? Well, the first player is this master stem cell, okay, germ cell, whatever word you use to. This is the cell that when it gets a chemical message can become a different type of cell. And the name of the cell is called osteochondral progenitor cell. So progenitor is just telling you it's the precursor cell. What does osteo and chondral tell you? I'm going to give you a second to think about this. Osteo has os in it, which means bone. And chondral is what I just explained earlier. That's the root for cartilage. So what this means is the same one stem cell, depending on the message, can become, because it's a progenitor, can become either bone or cartilage. And so right now we're talking about it's getting a chemical messenger to say become cartilage. And when it gets that chemical messenger, that osteochondral progenitor cell will become a chondroblast. So if you remember, that suffix blast meant that this was a slightly more immature cell. It's more mature than a stem cell, but it's not all the way to a site. So it's between the two. And what this does is it actively produces. It's the builder. Okay, so chondroblast is making new cartilage. Then when it's done building the house, building the cartilage, it's going to retire and become a chondrocyte. And the chondrocyte's just going to maintain the house. Gonna sweep it, gonna clean it out, get rid of the debris, maybe have to do a little bit of repairs, but it's not looking to make it bigger generally. So with cartilage, there's two different methods to grow. And so if you're doing this cartilage video, please do not move on to the bone formation video in the same session. Do this one and study this one and understand these two types of growth and the terminology, and then come back another day to do the actual bone formation. And in fact, I don't even think bone formation is part of this first group. It's in the second half of this lecture. So this handout that you're given is actually 2 lectures worth of stuff. So it's in the second half. So the 2 ways of forming cartilage are appositional growth and interstitial growth. Okay. So I want to talk about appositional growth in a cartoon drawing. So we have cartilage. Surrounding the cartilage, we are going to have a rim of connective tissue called perichondrium. Peri meaning around, chondro, cartilage. And in the perichondrium, this is where we're going to find the osteochondral progenitor cells, which will then become chondroblasts, which will then become chondrocytes. And so these cells are going to eventually be forming new chondrocytes. So here's how it happens. We have an osteochondral progenitor cell. Anytime you see OCP, osteochondral progenitor cell, that gets the message, make cartilage. It becomes a chondroblast. So the chondroblasts are still in the perichondrium, okay? And then they're going to start secreting the extracellular matrix, which is going to contain a chemical called chondroitin sulfate, which is a chemical from the name. You can tell, oh, chondro, it's something that's in cartilage. What's interesting is it's the same chemical we're going to see in bone later on. And so it's going to secrete the matrix, and then the matrix surrounds it in all different directions. And so that kind of pushes the chondroblast away from the perichondrium. And now it's surrounded by all this matrix, and it has its little hot tub that surrounds it, its little lacuna. Okay. Then what happens is it matures and becomes a chondrocyte surrounded with its lacuna. So an osteochondral progenitor cells, which in the perichondrium. So all the new cartilage, all the matrix is being made on the outside of the pre-existing cartilage. Kind of like if you took a candle and you would dip it into wax, all your candle newness would all be on the outside. So that kind of explains when I go back to this picture over here, where we can see the mature chondrocytes in all their lacuna here in the center of a piece of cartilage. And then we have a rim of chondroblast, which has a bunch of fibroblasts because it's fibrous connective tissue. And this is also where we'll find all the osteochondral progenitor cells. So progenitor cells mixed in with the fibroblasts, become chondroblasts, start secreting matrix, move further and further towards the center of the cartilage, and when they mature, they're going to become chondrocytes. Okay. So let's look at it histologically now that we've done the cartoon drawing. Remember, the precursor for all the types of connective tissue was mesenchyme. So we have to start with mesenchyme. And we have a mesenchyme stem cell, which gets the message, become an osteochondral progenitor cell. And then the osteochondral progenitor cell gets the message that says, make cartilage. Okay. So this is what we have going on in this upper one. This is mostly mesenchyme, which is this tiny little focus of developing cartilage. And the picture down below, you can still see there's a lot of fibroblasts surrounding it, but I think you can start seeing that this is cartilage because you can see all the little lacuna surrounding all the chondrocytes. It's very cellular. They're still secreting lots and lots of matrix, and they are going to space out. Okay. So once it's mature, it's going to look like on the right side, cartoon drawing on the top. Perichondrium with fibroblasts and osteochondral progenitor cells. They get the message, become chondroblasts. So those are at the interface between the cartilage and the perichondrium. They start secreting lots and lots of matrix. Whoops, sorry. And that makes the cartilage get bigger. When they are mature, the chondrocytes are in their little lacuna, just doing maintenance. And then down here at the bottom, it's the same thing done with regular histology, only it's flipped upside down, where the perichondrium is at the bottom of the picture. You can see it's very cellular right here at the interface between the perichondrium and the cartilage. That's because we have lots and lots of chondroblasts in that area. And then you can see lots of matrix over here, and it's chondrocytes. So look at the difference between the mature cartilage, which is mostly extracellular matrix, as opposed to the developing cartilage on the left, which is very cellular, but now it needs to secrete even more and more matrix. All right, so if you got that, go on to this one, and here's what I need you to do. I need you to, when I'm done talking, tell you to do it, stop it. As you can see, there are 5 different things going on. I have labeled the perichondrium here, and then all the rest of this is cartilage. And then there's 5 lines. So number 1 is what kind of cell is that? Number 2, what kind of cell is that? Number 3, what is this stuff here? Number 4, what kind of cell is this? And number 5, what is that thing? So go ahead and stop it. Okay, so if you didn't write down your answers, I want you to write them down and not just think it through. So I'm going to give you time to stop it again and write down your answers. All right, should we see how well you did? Here are the answers, okay? So hopefully you did okay. If you got confused, please shoot me an email and ask me a question where you went wrong. All right, so with that, we are done with that type of cartilage formation. What was it called? Appositional. And where is the new cartilage formed? On the outside. All right, so that brings us to our second type of cartilage formation, which is called interstitial growth. And what does inter mean? Between. So this is a totally different type, of cartilage growth. What we have going on here is we have existing cartilage already. We think we're done with the cartilage. We've got lots of chondrocytes, okay? New chondrocytes. We just have chondrocytes. The cartilage thinks its work is done. It's retired. It's ready for graduation. But then it gets a chemical message. Hey, we need you to make some cartilage. And so what happens is a chondrocyte that was minding its own business, just maintaining its house, undergoes mitosis. And now there's 2 of them sharing the same lacuna. And they're not happy. Nope. It was supposed to be a private studio apartment for 1 cell only. So what happens is they start secreting the extracellular matrix. And what that does is it pushes them apart. And so the cartilage is growing by making new matrix between chondrocytes. So new chondrocytes are made through mitosis, and the matrix forms within existing cartilage between those chondrocytes. There's no osteochondral progenitor cell involved at all in this process, and there's no chondroblast involved at all in this process. So those are the 2 types. So what happens as you get older, when you're your parents' age or grandparents' age? Well, that chondrogenesis at the perichondrium, that appositional, that ended when you were done with puberty, okay? So chondrocytes can still make a little bit of matrix because they can maintain their property, but if you damage cartilage, okay, they're used to producing this much. If you're damaging cartilage, you want this much, and they go, I can't do that. I don't have enough nutrition to become that metabolically active, okay? So what happens is with that poor nutrition, the chondrocytes start shrinking up and dying, which gives them even worse nutrition, and we actually can lose cartilage, and we can get calcified cartilage, or we can have that cartilage change into a different type of tissue. And with that, I'm done with this first lecture. Thank you for all your hard work, and come back and I will see you in class soon.